Have you ever noticed how, as we age, the world gets a little quieter, but somehow more complicated? The phone rings less often, the invitations slow down, and suddenly it feels like time stretches differently. The kids are busy, the house feels emptier, and you start to wonder if your presence still holds the same weight it once did. But here's the truth that no one tells you. Growing older doesn't just make you wiser, it also makes you more vulnerable. And that vulnerability, it's exactly what some people are counting on. You may not see it at first. It doesn't arrive like a storm. It creeps in like a breeze, someone offering to help with the groceries, a friendly neighbor asking about your will, an old friend suddenly showing up after decades of silence. On the surface, it all seems harmless, but underneath, there's often a hidden motive. What I'm about to share might shock you, but it's something every person over 60 needs to hear. The older you get, the more you are targeted. Not for your experience, but for your kindness. Not for your strength, but for your solitude. Take Mr. James, for example. He's 74, lives alone after his wife passed 5 years ago, and spends most days tending his garden or watching old westerns on TV. One day, a young woman from his neighborhood started visiting him. She said she was just checking in, being neighborly. At first, it was sweet. She brought him cookies, helped him set up his new phone, even sat with him for afternoon chats. But a few months in, she began asking about money. Just little things. Can I borrow $20 for gas? Or, could you help me out with this bill? James, being the gentleman he is, didn't want to seem rude. He wanted the company, but by the end of the year, his savings had dipped drastically, and she had vanished as quickly as she came. This happens more often than we like to admit. Older adults become targets, not because they're weak, but because they're open-hearted. They've spent a lifetime being the helper, the provider, the one others could count on. And now, that same instinct to help, to say yes, to avoid conflict, is being weaponized against them. There's also something deeper. As we get older, the fear of loneliness begins to speak louder. You might not even realize it, but there's this quiet ache inside, a longing for connection, for someone to talk to, for someone to just notice you're still here. That ache is powerful, and those with bad intentions can sense it, like blood in the water. They know that if they offer just enough warmth, just enough attention, you might let your guard down. And once your guard drops, so does your protection. Another reason older adults get targeted? Exhaustion. Not just physically, but emotionally. When you were younger, you had the stamina to argue, to stand up, to question things. Now, it's different. You don't want to deal with confrontation. You'd rather keep the peace. So when someone pushes your boundaries, instead of pushing back, you might just nod, smile, and carry the weight quietly. But here's what you need to hear. Peace that costs your well-being is not peace. It's silent suffering. And then there's technology. The world has moved so fast in the last 2 decades. Emails, text messages, online banking, scammers pretending to be from Medicare or your bank. It's overwhelming. You miss one detail, click the wrong link, trust the wrong caller, and suddenly your identity or your money is gone. They're not just targeting you because you're old. They're targeting you because they assume you won't know how to fight back. Think about it. You've lived through wars, recessions, raising kids, losing loved ones, and somehow people still treat you like you're easy prey. It's insulting, but it's also dangerous, because if you don't recognize these patterns, if you don't speak up, you risk becoming part of a very silent epidemic, elderly exploitation. And it's not just about money, it's about your time, your energy, your trust. Margaret, an 81-year-old widow, once told me how her nephew started visiting her after years of no contact. He said he missed her, that he wanted to reconnect. She was thrilled. Family is everything, right? But soon, he started bringing his laundry over. Then he was asking to borrow her car. Then it was cash. She said yes at first because she wanted to believe in his love, but deep down she knew she was being used. She just didn't want to admit it. This is the trap. We think if we just give a little more, they'll stay. If we say yes, they'll love us more. But here's what you must remember. The people who truly care about you will never manipulate your kindness. They won't make you feel guilty for saying no. They won't disappear when you draw a boundary. Anyone who only loves you when you're giving them something isn't loving you. They're using you. And that's the truth that shocks so many people in their later years. After a life of giving, you suddenly realize that not everyone deserves access to your heart. And yes, that realization hurts. It feels like betrayal, but it's also a wake-up call. Because the older you get, the more you have to protect not just your money or your home, but your peace, your health, your emotional balance. The truth is, this phase of life is supposed to be your time, to rest, to reflect, to enjoy the years you've earned. But that can't happen if you're surrounded by people who drain you. So before we move forward, I want you to ask yourself something. Have I allowed anyone into my life just because I was afraid to be alone? Have I said yes when I wanted to say no? Have I mistaken manipulation for love? If the answer is yes, even just once, it's okay. You're not weak, you're human, and you're not alone. So many good, kind-hearted people fall into the same pattern. But the good news is, once you see it, you can stop it. You can change it. And in the next part, we're going to talk about exactly how, because that kindness, your beautiful, generous spirit, can become dangerous when used the wrong way. Being friendly is a gift, but only when it's given to the right people. Let's talk honestly now, because this might hit a little close to home. There's a reason people say that older folks are some of the kindest souls you'll ever meet. Decades of life teach you patience. Loss teaches you compassion. Hardships give you a softer tone. You don't interrupt anymore, that you listen more. You've learned how to let go of petty things. And while that kindness is beautiful, it also comes with a hidden cost, if it's not guarded. Because sometimes being too friendly opens the door to the very people who will hurt you. It's not that you're naive. You've lived long enough to see the good and bad in people. But there's something about old age that makes you want to keep the peace. You fought enough battles. Now, you just want quiet. So when someone starts invading your space, crossing your boundaries, or making you uncomfortable, you smile instead of speaking up. You say, "It's okay," even when it's not. And over time, that friendliness, so warm, so welcoming, turns into a trap. There's a big difference between kindness and openness. Kindness is controlled, thoughtful, discerning. Openness, when left unchecked, can be dangerous, especially in this season of life. People assume that because you're smiling, you're agreeing. They think your silence is a yes, and when you don't push back, they assume they've got the green light to take more. You'd be surprised how quickly manipulation can disguise itself as kindness. A neighbor who starts dropping by a little too often, a caregiver who shares personal problems with you to get sympathy, a family member who makes you feel guilty for setting a limit. They don't start by asking for big things. They start small, just enough to see if you'll allow it. Just enough to test how much of yourself you'll give before you realize they're not here for you. They're here for what you can offer. Let me tell you about Helen. She's 79, bright, witty, one of those people who always bakes extra just in case someone visits. Her warmth is legendary in her retirement community, but lately she's been tired. Not physically, emotionally. She told me, "I've never said no to anyone in my life, but now I'm drained all the time." Turns out her apartment had turned into a drop-in center. People would come for coffee, advice, to vent, to ask for small favors, and she felt like she couldn't refuse. But no one ever asked how she was doing. No one noticed when her fridge was empty. They came for her cookies, not her company. She wasn't a friend to them. She was a free service. That's the quiet danger of being too open in old age. Your heart stays big, but your energy gets smaller. You don't bounce back like you used to. One emotional drain can knock you out for days, and yet we don't talk about this enough. We talk about elder fraud, phone scams, identity theft. But the real damage, it often starts with people you know, people who claim to love you, people who just need a little help. And because you're generous, you give it. Here's the catch. When you say yes out of fear, fear of conflict, fear of being alone, fear of seeming unkind, it's not kindness anymore, it's surrender. And the truth is, many older adults aren't being too nice. They're just afraid to be misunderstood, afraid of confrontation, afraid of saying no and losing someone's company. But let me ask you this. What good is a company if it leaves you empty? What good is a conversation that exhausts your spirit? If every visit ends with you feeling used instead of uplifted, what are you really gaining? Too many people confuse friendliness with goodness, but not everyone who smiles at you has good intentions. Not everyone who brings you a gift deserves access to your trust. Some people have mastered the art of manipulation. They know how to flatter. They know how to make you feel needed. And once they find your weak spot, your loneliness, your guilt, your generous nature, they don't let go easily. They'll call it just asking for help. They'll say, "You're the only one I can talk to." They'll frame it like you're doing a noble thing. But listen closely. If someone always leaves with something and never brings anything back, not even peace, they are not your friend. They are a taker. And takers don't stop unless you stop them. This is where boundaries come in, not to shove people out, but to protect your heart. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to turn off your phone. You are allowed to close your door and rest. You do not have to answer every call. You do not have to accept every invitation. And you certainly don't owe anyone your time just because you've known them a long time. Sometimes the people you've known longest are the ones who take you for granted the most. And if someone makes you feel guilty for setting a boundary, ask yourself, what are they really upset about? That they lost access to your kindness, or that they lost control over it? There's a big difference. Real friends respect your space. Real loved ones understand your limits. They won't guilt you, rush you, or demand from you. They'll check in, not check up. They'll ask how you're feeling, not just what you can do for them. And if you don't have those people in your life yet, don't worry. They exist. But sometimes you have to clear out the wrong crowd before the right ones show up. You've spent your whole life helping others, raising kids, building careers, caring for family, giving, and giving. Now, in these years that are supposed to be peaceful, you deserve to be surrounded by people who pour into you, who bring warmth instead of weight, who give you energy, not take it away. So take a moment and ask yourself, who in your life is filling you up? And who is slowly draining you? Because in the next part, we're going to talk about what it really means to draw a line, not to be harsh, but to survive. Because boundaries in old age aren't just smart, they're sacred. Let's be honest, saying no has never been easy, especially when you've spent a lifetime being the dependable one, the one people could always call, the one who stayed late, helped out, gave more, even when no one asked how you were doing. But now, in this stage of life, it's time to flip the script. Because here's something no one ever taught us. Growing up, boundaries aren't rude, they're survival. You are not being selfish by protecting your time. You're not being cold for needing quiet. You're not being dramatic because you don't want to pick up every phone call or have people dropping by unannounced. That's not you changing for the worse. That's you finally realizing that your well-being matters just as much as anyone else's. And yet, so many people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s still feel guilty for drawing a line. Why? Because we were raised in a world that praised selflessness, even if it meant self-neglect. We were taught to be nice, to avoid confrontation, to keep the peace. But what no one told us is that being nice without boundaries invites the wrong people to walk all over us. Think of your energy like a bank account. Every phone call, every favor, every emotional conversation, every time you push aside your needs for someone else, that's a withdrawal. And if you're not putting anything back in, you go bankrupt, spiritually, emotionally, sometimes even physically. That fatigue you feel, that heavy feeling after certain visits or interactions, that's not age, that's exhaustion from carrying too many people who don't carry you back. Let's talk about Dorothy. She's 76, retired from nursing, living with her dog Toby in a small house she paid off years ago. She's generous to a fault. Neighbors constantly ask for favors, watching their kids, picking up groceries, even borrowing her car. Her family, they love her, but only call when they need help with bills or babysitting. One day she told me, I feel like I'm living for everyone else, but no one's really here for me. And that right there is why boundaries are essential, not to isolate yourself, but to preserve the best of yourself. Because here's the truth, not everyone deserves a seat at your table. Not everyone is entitled to your time, and you are allowed to be selective now, not out of arrogance, but out of wisdom. If someone drains you every time you see them, that's not friendship. If you walk away from a conversation feeling worse than before, that's not a connection. And if saying no to someone makes them angry, pay attention, because that means your compliance was more important to them than your comfort. Let me repeat that. If your no offends someone, it means your yes was being taken for granted. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you love people less. It means you love yourself enough not to burn out for others. It's not rejection, it's protection. You've lived long enough to know what peace feels like. You've seen the damage that chaos can do. Why would you allow that back into your life just because you're afraid someone might call you unfriendly? And let's be clear, people will talk. They'll say, she's changed. He doesn't come around anymore. They used to be so helpful. But you know what? Let them talk. You have nothing to prove. You've already given decades of your life to others. You don't owe anyone an explanation for needing rest, needing peace, saying not today. You've earned the right to choose who you allow into your space. You've earned the right to spend your days in peace, not in obligation. Boundaries also mean not answering every call, not attending every event, not being the emotional dumping ground for everyone's problems. You are not a counselor on call. You are not a crisis center. You are a person with your own needs, your own healing, and your own desires. You might say, But what if they get upset? Here's the hard truth. If someone gets angry because you finally said no, they were never truly respecting you in the first place. They were just benefiting from your silence. Boundaries are also about more than people. They're about time. Protect your mornings. Protect your routines. Don't let someone's drama ruin your breakfast. Don't let their last-minute crisis steal your sleep. It's okay to say, "I'll talk to you tomorrow." It's okay not to reply right away. It's okay to prioritize your peace over someone else's panic. You're not responsible for fixing everyone's life. Let that sink in. You are not required to solve problems you didn't create. You are not obligated to carry emotional weight that doesn't belong to you. And you are certainly not meant to feel guilty for putting yourself first, once in a while. When you say no, you're not being difficult, you're being clear. When you protect your time, you're not being distant, you're being healthy. When you stop answering every cry for help, you're not being unkind. You're choosing peace over pressure. Think about how far you've come, everything you've survived, everything you've built. Do you really want to spend your golden years chasing approval? Running errands for people who never check on you unless they need something? You've earned this season of life. It should feel light, not heavy. And if that means saying no more often, good. That's not being mean. That's maturity. And here's the most beautiful part. When you set boundaries, you start attracting people who respect them, people who don't take advantage of your time, people who ask how you're doing, people who refill your cup instead of always sipping from it. But first, you have to clear the space. So take inventory. Who respects your time? Who supports your boundaries? Who adds to your life? And who quietly subtracts from it? Because in the next part, we're going to talk about the power of your inner circle and why, as you age, it must become smaller, stronger, and more sacred than ever before. You've likely heard it before. The older you get, the smaller your circle becomes. But no one really explains why. That's not a loss. It's a blessing. Because in this chapter of your life, you're not just managing time, you're protecting peace. And not everyone should have access to it. When we're younger, our lives are full of movement. Big families, busy workplaces, crowded holidays, people constantly coming and going. But as we age, our capacity for noise, emotional or social, shrinks. And that's not weakness, that's wisdom. Every visit leaves an imprint, and if you allow the wrong people too close, they don't just take your time, they disturb your balance. It's not about being antisocial, it's about being intentional. This is the time to guard your inner circle like a treasure chest, because it is one. You are not just letting people into your house, you're letting them into your mind, your heart, your sacred routine. If they don't bring peace, clarity, encouragement, or kindness, they don't belong in that space. I know that can be hard, especially when it involves family. Maybe it's a grandchild who only visits when they need money. Maybe it's a son or daughter who stops by with a heavy load of complaints, then leaves you emotionally drained. Maybe it's a lifelong friend whose presence used to comfort you, but now always ends in gossip, judgment, or tension. Let me say this clearly. History doesn't equal harmony. Just because someone has been in your life for years doesn't mean they still deserve front row access. Some people were part of your past. That doesn't mean they belong in your present. And here's the shift. You no longer owe everyone your availability. You don't have to return every call. You don't have to explain your silence. You don't have to attend every gathering or reply to every message. Sometimes peace looks like a quiet phone. Sometimes protection sounds like the word no. Let's talk about practical protection. Yes, the emotional and spiritual side is huge, but there are also very real everyday risks in this season of life that you can't ignore. First, your finances. If someone pressures you to lend money, co-sign a loan, or give access to your bank accounts, press pause. You've spent decades saving, building, planning. Don't let guilt or manipulation erase it in one conversation. If someone truly cares about you, they won't put you in a position where you have to choose between keeping your money or keeping their love. You do not need to fund someone else's bad choices just because you're older. You do not need to die with all that money. That's nonsense. Your money is not their inheritance until you say so. You have every right to use it for your well-being, your joy, your comfort, your safety, and you have every right to say no, even to your own children. Second, your time. Don't give your time to people who don't value it. If someone always talks over you, makes you feel small, or only shows up with problems, it's okay to limit how much access they have. Just because you're home more often doesn't mean your time is free. Your time is precious. Protect it. Third, your space. Your home should feel like a sanctuary, not a waiting room for people to dump their drama. If someone's presence shifts the energy in your house, makes it feel tense, chaotic, heavy, trust that feeling. You don't have to open your door to everyone. You certainly don't have to explain why you need time alone. You don't owe hospitality at the cost of your health. Lastly, your intuition. That feeling in your gut when something feels off, that little voice that says, "This doesn't feel right," that's not paranoia, that's wisdom. You've earned the right to trust yourself. If someone's words sound sweet but something inside you tenses up, listen to that. You're not being rude, you're being aware. And here's the most powerful truth of all. The moment you stop letting the wrong people in, the right ones have space to show up. Maybe it's a new friend at the senior center who actually listens when you talk. Maybe it's a nurse or caregiver who respects your independence. Maybe it's a neighbor who checks on you without asking for anything. Maybe it's even rediscovering peace in your own company, realizing that being alone is not the same as being lonely. There's a deep joy that comes when your days aren't ruled by guilt or obligation, when your phone rings and you want to answer, when the people in your life speak to you with respect, not expectations, when your home becomes calm again. That joy, that's your reward for finally choosing boundaries over burnout. You've lived through so much: heartbreak, change, survival, caring others, sacrificing for family, building legacies, and now it's your time. Time to walk lighter, breathe easier, sleep without worrying about who you might have upset for saying no. You are not unkind. You are wise. You are not cold. You are clear. You are not rude. You are finally protecting what matters most: your energy, your peace, your joy. And let me tell you something else. This doesn't just help you. It teaches the younger generation how to age with dignity, how to stand firm, how to stop tolerating manipulation disguised as love. When your grandkids watch you say no with grace, they'll remember it. When others see you choose peace over popularity, it plants a seed. Your life is still teaching. Your voice still matters. So let them call you difficult. Let them say you've changed. You have, and thank God for it. You've changed from people-pleasing to peacekeeping, being drained to being deliberate, feeling guilty to finally feeling free. Because here's the real truth, the one no one tells you when you're younger. You don't owe anyone access to your soul just because you've known them long enough. You owe yourself the freedom to enjoy your days, to protect your heart, to sit in silence without apologizing for it. So be careful in old age, not because you're weak, but because you've become more valuable than ever. And some people will want to take from that, but now you know better, and knowing better, that's how you finish this chapter, with strength, with peace, and with your head held high.